or tea? Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Insights and Innovation series for Cool Media is going to be talking to us about attribution. We've got the amazing Owen here. I want to just say Cool Media has had a few, and I'll let Owen explain, but a few name changes. But this is by far the coolest name I have ever come across so far, and I'm loving it. And so without further ado, I'm going to introduce Owen. He can take things over, and I'll keep my mouth shut. Owen, over to you.
Thank you, Sam. Cheers, mate. And yeah, we have had a few name changes, mate, but I think we'll probably just stick with Cool Media rather than formerly known as. Otherwise, we might be here for quite a while. So thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and to be talking to some wonderful indie agencies, no doubt, who've joined the call. I guess just the one paragraph on us is that we're a managed service programmatic provider across a whole bunch of all channels that you would be looking to invest in. But in particular today, I wanted to just keep things reasonably high level and talk a little bit about some of the pain points, I guess, we're trying to solve for both marketers and for our indie agency partners as well, predominantly through some really cool attribution models and insights and dashboards that we've built. So I guess just to dive in, really there were sort of two questions, I guess, when I thought about this that, you know, if you distill everything down, we're trying to solve for. So the first one is, I guess, when you think about you guys in agency land and the different channels that you can invest in now, is how can we actually provide you guys with the ability to demonstrate the benefits of brand and performance working in tandem? There's a lot of research around, obviously, investment in both these channels being complementary to each other. But what we wanted to do is probably dive in a little bit deeper to that, and instead of sort of looking at longer pieces of research and so on and so forth, trying to look at a more immediate reporting capability that you can demonstrate to your clients of the impact of the complementary nature of those two channels. And then the second one is more around traditional brand channels. So, you know, if you take something like TV, which has obviously become digitized very, very quickly, and we know BVOD and catch-up TV and streaming video on demand is growing at a very, very fast pace. But historically, it's been viewed probably as a brand channel, and so our challenge was around how do we perhaps look at that as a potential performance channel with the data to back up and the proof points that are going to help agencies to be able to, I guess, back up that thinking and to challenge some old school thinking when it comes to traditional brand channels. So with that in mind, I think there's no doubt, and forgive me, I know that everyone on this call has probably seen this graph, or certainly the vast majority have. This is from the marketing effectiveness book that was then superseded with the long and the short of it by our good friends Les and Peter. And so again, research has been done well beyond what I'm going to show you today, but around the need for investment in both of those channels and the long-term effect of being able to build brand. But at the moment, and probably significantly over the last few years, and specifically at the moment with economic headwinds as they are, there's a lot of short-termism in market. And so I think that agencies are trying to convince their clients and trying to show clients that it's still important to be investing in brand channels. But our challenge to ourselves was how can we help those agency partners we're working with to actually better understand the impact of that brand investment in the shorter period, right? So longer term, we think that the brand obviously is definitely going to impact on sales longer term. But how can we take something a little bit more short term than that, particularly for clients who are maybe just sort of have some trepidation or a little bit reticent to invest in brand because of maybe the life cycle of their business, or perhaps they just don't have the budgets to be able to invest in both at the moment, or certainly not both in a meaningful way. And so being able to have some proof points here for indie agencies to go back to clients with and to be able to show them quite clearly what the proof points are is something that we set out to do when we built the tech that we have access to and that we on sell to our agency partners. So in writing this headline, one to many is becoming one to a few. I had to be very, very careful of the spell check here of one to many, and probably the way it's said as well, one too many. It's probably talking more about a media agency lunch on Fridays. So I think historically, if we look at TV, as a brand channel, it was very much just a broadcast to a large number of people, hopefully a large number of people that were watching any set program, and we hoped that our creative messaging would resonate with that audience, and we would measure that probably, if you think about old school sort of measurement of linear TV around tarps and taking set-top boxes from 1,000 homes out of 10 million households across the country and extrapolating out was relatively archaic. But as things have become more digital and as we've seen a move to data-led opportunities, particularly with connected TV and video on demand, when I say a few, I'm talking about probably at a household level. And so TV still obviously has its place and absolutely is a great medium in terms of reaching a vast number of people. But I think, if we take myself and if I've got two colleagues sort of down the road, each of the three of us can be watching the same program and see a different ad at the same time. And so being able to segment and build audiences and target audiences that way is allowing brands to have a much better understanding, probably at a household level, of who's doing what. And so one of the technologies that we've developed is understanding the link between connected TV exposure and someone taking from that same IP or same household, taking an action of value, right? Closing the loop into a sale. And so that's probably a whole different meeting. And I think that if there's interest in understanding the technical background of that system, we're happy to take meetings individually on that, but I won't be going into that today. But needless to say, we're able to sort of close off that loop to some sort of online action of value post-exposure. And so when we talk about performance channels, I think that if we did a survey on the call and we asked most people, where does performance live in a traditional marketing funnel? By the way, I Googled traditional marketing funnel and there seems to be no such thing anymore. This was probably the most simple one I could find, but there was about 100 different funnels that I could have chosen to drop into this slide. So I think even the funnel itself is changing, but predominantly I would argue that probably most people are going to talk about a performance channel being lower funnel, right? So it's direct response, it's search and social and people taking action. So I think in terms of defining a performance channel, I think it's designed to drive a specific desired outcome or an action of value. It can be optimized. So there's levers to pull. There's data and insights that I can get from a performance channel that help me to optimize over time to drive better results. And then the final thing is that it can be measured. And I think the measurement piece is where we've really concentrated our efforts in terms of trying to measure in a robust way in different channels to be able to feed into those reports and insights that then empower our indie agency partners to have better conversations about the holistic, viewpoint of media investments and what that's doing for a client's business. So when I thought about measurement and attribution, it sort of brought me back to one of my favorite quotes. Again, for those on the call that aren't in the same vintage as myself, shall we say. This is an old quote, a very old quote from John Wanamaker. He was a merchant retailer back in the early 1900s. And he said, half the money I spend on advertising is wasted. The trouble is I don't know which half. And so, if you think about attribution and understanding media investments and advertising investments, we've obviously come a long way. We're not at the point now, and digital has become somewhat of a double-edged sword, I guess, in that it's highly measurable and possibly too measurable. And so, we then look at other channels and we try to figure out whether we can, fairly assess those channels without the same level of tracking as digital allows. But I think we have come a long way, and I guess this is part of the problem we're trying to solve is, does advertising work? What are the impacts of media investments, and how do we again provide agency partners with proof points to be able to actually demonstrate those outcomes and those important investments in media to their clients? So I think if we talk about the access to these insights and attribution models, what are the key benefits, I guess, to indies? And I probably should just highlight as well that we only work with indies. We don't work with any of the holding groups. So we're very much focused on independent agencies and working with those partners specifically. I think there's three main things that probably we can help clients with, and those are firstly to retain clients. I think the more information, the more reporting capabilities you're able to demonstrate to your clients, the more you become subject matter experts in those areas. Then clearly you're able to then build trust between yourselves and your clients, and ultimately that's going to be a significant client retention tool. And I think that part of that then is obviously also helping you to win new business. And so, I talk about not working with the holding groups because I think some of the reporting capabilities we offer just to indies are going to be useful when it comes to going up against a holding group and pitching against those guys. And so even if everyone on this call suddenly became a Cool Media client, you had access to the same dashboard, you guys are in a creative industry, and how you would then take some of those insights or those reporting capabilities and apply them to a new business pitch would be different amongst all of you. And so I think the ability to have some points of difference there in pitching for new business would be super useful. And then I guess just leading on from the retention piece is, we want to try and help you guys grow those current customers as well, right? So the only way you can build your businesses is to have clients spend more money or to have more clients. So if we can help you grow those current accounts, and again, through that trust you've built, through access to these reports, through being able to demonstrate the impact of these investments, I think clients are going to feel more comfortable with the ability to invest in different channels and actually to rely on those proof points as a way for you to demonstrate to the clients that media investment is actually having an effect on a desired outcome. So last slide, and then I'll jump into the dashboard just to run you through a couple of examples of the reports that we're hearing are really beneficial. I think if you put your thinking caps on in terms of who are the types of clients that are probably going to benefit most from this, and again, there's obviously hundreds more types that I could have come here with, but I sort of, in thinking about this, wanted to keep it to three main types of marketers, I guess, and clients that you're probably working with. So the first being the status quoers. The upside for you guys of a status quo type client is they're super easy to manage, right? They're happy to receive weekly reports that are spots and dots. They're pretty happy with the way things are progressing in terms of their relationships with you guys from a media standpoint. And so that has a challenge in itself of that they're probably a little bit unlikely to lean into different ways of thinking or new ways of thinking about their investments. So can we help status quoers? We can, but they're probably a little bit less interesting to us, and they're probably I guess not quite in our ideal customer profile. I think that comes from the next two groups. So lower funnelers, and again, forgive me, I've come up with these names probably on the fly. So I'm sure that people in marketing could have come up with something significantly more interesting than the naming conventions I've given, but our marketing team was tied up in the US, so they left it to me. So I think the upside with guys that are rusted on to last touch attribution models, for example, is that at some point they're going to reach a point of diminishing returns, right, in lower funnel tactics. And so they're going to have to invest in brand or further up the funnel. And I think most of them probably know that. But the challenge here is that they are probably going to have a little bit of trepidation about investing in those new channels. And so they're an ideal customer profile from our standpoint because we believe that we can provide those reporting and proof points to you guys to help you guys have better conversations and help them to feel better about investing in different channels. And then the third group is the sophisticated inquisitor. Again, like data nerd is probably the other naming convention you might give these guys. They're really rusted in terms of being convinced of the merits of different data points. They really want to deep dive into reporting. And probably the challenge with these guys, to be honest with you, is that they may just drive you crazy with a lot of questions. And so Probably also worth highlighting here that when we onboard you as a potential client, you guys as an agency are our client, and you guys dictate how much data and how much reporting is then fed through to the client direct. And so if you think that you've got one of these sophisticated inquisitors who's just going to go bananas with questions and detail, then you can obviously determine how much detail and how much reporting capability you offer to the client. If you think that they're going to need to see lots of stuff to keep them happy, then you can grant them access as well, but that's entirely up to you guys. So you guys are our client, and you determine what each of the marketers that you work with actually sees through the dashboard. So with that, I will switch to our dashboard. And hopefully everyone can see that.
Yeah,
Tiana,
we can see that.
You got that? Okay, cool. Excellent. Thanks, Sam. Cool. Okay, so up front, this is a demo environment. This is a US version of the dashboard, and so you will see some publishers over here. These are TV networks that some that you may be familiar with, some less familiar with. Everything we basically have that we surface in terms of data is led by an event. An event is effectively a pixel on a website. So all of the same data points across the top, you would expect to see these. There's nothing universally groundbreaking about any of this stuff up the top here. It's basically the tick box stuff to have in here so that we can monitor the usual types of metrics before we deep dive into the good stuff. But what will change is these two data points over here on the right, depending on what event you've chosen. So in this case, we've got checkouts pre-ticked. If I was an e-com business, for example, and I was more interested in revenue, then everything will update based on revenue and return on ad spend. So again, you can begin to see this is based on a BVOD campaign, and so you can begin to see that we can dive right into return on ad spend by network, for example, down here. Likewise, if we go back to checkouts and CPAs, we're beginning to have that crossover where this is effectively a TV channel, but it's being viewed from with a performance lens as opposed to that traditional reach and frequency. Now, reach and frequency are still important, and we're still going to include those as headline numbers here, but we want to be able to delve down into what are some of the proof points here that actually this medium is helping drive an actual sale or an online action of value. So there's lots of CPA opportunities down here. We can see we default to network, but I can have a look at CPA by any of these drop down items here. So if I was looking at creative, for example, then I could look at the CPA that each creative asset in that rotation is pulling in at the moment. And I can begin to, like we talked about, transitioning sort of a brand channel to a performance channel. I can begin to make optimizations based on some of the data outputs that I've got inside this report. So where I wanted to focus, though, just for the sake of time today, is on two reports in particular that as I said, we're getting a lot of feedback on the value of these. So the first one is around incrementality. And the way that this works, without hopefully getting too technical, is through a method we use called ghost bidding. And what that allows us to do is we can basically create what's called a holdout group. In the old parlance, this would be like a control versus an exposed when we're running a brand study, right? So we basically set a percentage of bids that we're not going to actually place a bid on, but we're still getting access to, excuse me, the data that is associated with that bid. And so we set that at around 20%. Effectively, what that means is that if I'm running a campaign where I'm targeting an audience of females from 25 to 54, then every fifth impression, every fifth bid that I get access to, we will keep the bid stream data, including things like device IDs, and we'll park that into a group that we know we're not going to run the TV campaign against. And so we then, with the other 4 bids, we obviously try to win those bids and try to deliver the campaign out. And at the end, when those users come through and convert on a client's website, we basically can check through the conversion pixel whether they've been exposed to the campaign or not. And so we then have a comparison of the conversion rates from those who've been exposed to the television campaign versus those that haven't. Excuse me. And so if you think about going back to the marketer types that we spoke about, I think your sophisticated inquisitor is going to love this stuff because they've probably got a pretty good feeling that it's having an effect anyway, but like how much of an effect is it actually having, and what is the actual overall incremental uplift in conversion from those that have been exposed going to actually be. And likewise, I think the second group is who had that trepidation around investing, by showing them these types of insights and the lift that is going to occur when they invest in channels they're not investing at the moment, they obviously then feel much better about being able to proceed with investments in those channels. And so again, that helps you guys to grow the pie from an existing account. So I've defaulted to, you can see this is just overall lift, right? So this is out of all of the different campaigns that are running, this is the overall incremental uplift and statistically relevant. So if we're running these campaigns and there's not statistical relevance between the exposed and the control counts, we just won't show the uplift. There won't be anything to see there. So we make sure that robustness is behind there before we begin to populate these reports. But the overall lift is one thing. I think the other thing to think about is, again, we can show you incrementality against all of these drop downs. And so if we look at publisher, for example, I might go back to publisher here just to give you an example. Excuse me. So if I was looking at the report here and I was just looking through the lens of CPA, then I can see that Fubo is my lowest CPA channel, my lowest CPA network. But if I delve a little bit deeper into incrementality by each of the networks, then I can see that actually Paramount in this instance is driving the highest amount of incremental conversion. And so to be able to have a different lens to be able to look through and to understand the part that each of those individual networks is playing in the overall customer journey and sort of a more holistic view of investment by different channel, then I'm able to basically show the client that actually, I shouldn't just switch off Paramount, who's coming fourth in my CPA over here. It's actually delivering a significant amount of incremental conversion. And so it's a nice checkpoint to be able to I guess, double check that, each of these publishers is doing its job. And likewise, we can do this by creative asset again. So I might look at, how much incrementality is each creative asset driving, and should I begin to optimize there to certain creatives based on the incremental drive that they're delivering versus others, for example. So again, a ton of different reports here. So if you think about, a standard programmatic TV or network report will usually contain the number of impressions delivered, some video completion rates, and maybe some reference to reach and frequency, and that's probably about it. Whereas if you compare that to what we can offer you here in terms of access to these reporting dashboards, you're able to deep dive significantly and probably provide much more detailed reporting and proof points to those clients you've got access to. The other report that I'll show you quickly here is called a halo effect report. So this will only work if your lower funnel tactics employ the use of UTMs. But the idea is similar to the incrementality report. So through a UTM, that is someone basically clicking on something to take an action, we can track via our conversion pixel where they've come from. So if we take Google as an example, what we can basically show here is that this blue bar these are all Google conversions, by the way. They've all come from Google, both blue and gray. However, the blue bar, we know we're exposed to the TV campaign in this instance. And so if you think about your middle group we spoke about, who's sort of very much stuck in our lower funnelers, they're stuck in that lower funnel and they're not quite ready to invest in upper funnel, then we can demonstrate here that there's a 281% increase in incremental lift when exposed to the BVOD campaign, and then they've come through Google versus just running search or Google by itself. And so, as an agency, you're able to sort of demonstrate the superpower of investing in other channels and the impact that's having on tactics that are already live and running as well. So as a marketer that's not quite sure or not quite ready to invest or wants a proof point or an understanding of what this investment is going to do versus just continuing to invest solely in one channel, that's where we're getting a lot of response from our indie partners to that these conversations are much better conversations to be having with those types of marketers than just trying to convince them without a proof point to invest in other channels. So I'll show you guys one more or a couple more pieces just over our filtering here, and then I can save some time for some questions at the end. So I think the emphasis on attribution for us, we've tried to incorporate different methodologies. So as you can see, we've got our default, if you like, is a last touch, and again we're talking primarily around connected TV, so it's last view with a conversion window or post view window that you guys can select. So we default to last touch in 30 days, but it's one of the questions I often get asked when we demo the dashboard is, what's your look back window? And my answer to that is it's whatever you guys want it to be. We don't predefine that, or we don't limit that in any way. You guys determine what methodology and the look back window of that methodology, and then you can run this report until the cows come home. So we have 4 different methodologies. Last touch is as it sounds. We also offer a first touch, a linear model, and a time decay model. So again, all the data will update basically based on the attribution methodology you use. And if you're wanting to demonstrate again the impact on CPAs and so on and so forth from different methodologies, then you're able to do that through using different attribution models and again creating sort of different conversations or different lenses to look through in terms of understanding the impact of different networks, etc. And likewise, the conversion windows, if I go back to last touch, and instead of 30 days, I think that TV should be doing the job in 2 weeks. Likewise, all that data will update based on the different methodologies and different conversion windows I'm applying. So I think that's probably all I'll step through today. Certainly, there's a bit more, as I said at the start, there's probably a bit more from a technical standpoint in terms of how we map back those conversions to exposures in households. And more than happy to take those conversations offline and explain to you guys in a bit more detail how that works in terms of the back-end mapping. But hopefully that's been of use to you guys today. So I guess Sam and Beck, I'm open to some questions now as well, if anyone would like to sing out.
Thank you, Owen. Guys, any questions for Owen? And sometimes there are not questions, and quite often there is not questions. So we can connect you afterwards if anyone's got any questions. Owen, thank you very much for that, and thank you for your support of the Indies. Love what you're doing there, and I think this is a great model and great platform to, from an analytics point of view. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Just final reminders, you'll receive correspondence on shortly with Pitchcella, so make sure your teams and yourselves enter it. That's going to be awesome. Digibytes in Melbourne is on the 9th, couple of seats left. Brisbane, Christmas in July on the 21st. Make sure you're there if you're in Brisbane or in Queensland. And then we've got a silent auction raising money for a youth suicide charity called the Harrison Riddell Foundation. So make sure you tune in and look at that. There'll be some wonderful gifts on that. And thank you very much for tuning in. And we'll talk to everyone next week. Thank you, Owen, and have a great week, guys.
Thanks, Sam.